gap was closed. Now here we are citing example of one of the most developed countries in the world. Try to imagine the kind of benefits that would infiltrate in economies where gender bias and female education is still a major rising concern. Now at the surface, the topic looks like a no-brainer, as schools are supposed to prepare us for the road ahead. And we all know that we interact with both the sexes in our day-to-day lives, in our professional domains. However, there are strong logical arguments on both sides. Let's first start with the advantages of co-ed schooling system. Now, co-education could be one of the first opportunities for equal gender education in societies. Some major research studies conducted in this field have revealed that students feel more confident expressing their views in the presence of opposite sex peers than those in single sex environments. Now, there are research on both sides. In case of co-education, such beneficial behavioral aspects would start benefiting young girls and boys from an early age. Conversely, there's also been fewer cases of boys engaging in harassment and bullying among their own peers and being friendlier with girls in a mixed gender education environment. Now, in India, let me share some very interesting data with you. Children from co-educational schools happen to have better, not stereotype, really helps, and they can go on to do whatever they're good at. Next, I think another very important aspect is being carefree. Some educators who teach in single-sex schools say that, very often, if not always, we have seen students performing better in all boys or all girls school. And now, one of the reasons is that during adolescence or teenage years, as ma'am also mentioned, because of difference in rate of maturity, what happens is, and also during those years, both boys and girls are very appearance conscious, socially aware. So when they're studying alongside each other, they often form relationships, and it's normal. But that can detract from the focus of education and academic work. Thus, in a single-sex schools, girls are free to focus on becoming themselves and getting the best possible education without distraction, and vice versa. Next, I think really important is, early relationships, which I guess is an extrapolation from what we discussed earlier. Students spend most of their time in school, and in a co-ed school, this means boys and girls have more time to be together and interact with one another. Now, one challenge is that it can lead to, engaging in relationships and premature physical intimacy. Now, these kids at times may be careless. This can result in distraction. We may argue that it can happen even outside school, and that's a very logical argument. But school is where they spend maximum time on a regular basis. Next, I think, with regard to confidence, in a classroom setting where students are all boys or all girls, students are more confident to speak up and perform in class because they're less conscious of their classmates. They're not worried about what their classmates from opposite sex will think of them, and especially in senior classes 11 and 12, etc. At times, students, and again, this can't be a universal truth, at times students tend to be shy around the opposite sex, especially in activities like participating in activities like recitation, etc. Now, in the words of John Dick, John Dick is a psychologist, author, and educator who has researched significantly on this topic. Now, I quote her, this is a field where there is quite significant research. I'll try to summarize them quickly. If you look at all the research in last 20 years, it basically says if you have a girl, you might want to consider a girl school experience at some point in her life. If you have a boy, the research supports co-education for boys. The why of that is interesting. Girls in general who spend more time in single sex setting tend to have better self-esteem, better achievement in the present and throughout life. Boys who attend co-ed schools tend to be better in terms of social development, language development, and social savviness. I suppose would be the best way of describing that. There's a differential in the support. Yes for girls and no for boys. I always end by saying the quality of teachers. Now this I think is very important. It's not about single gender or co-ed schools. The quality of teacher and the quality of school has more to do with it than whether it is single sex or co-ed. Thus, I think there are logical arguments on both the sides, but one cannot deny the fact that when we look at things from a macro perspective and considering the fact that in a professional setting, at workplace, in institutions of higher academics, both boys and girls need to study together, need to work together. And I guess considering that, there's no denying the fact that co-education system has its own advantages. And I think I completely agree on this point that it's not about single gender or co-ed schools. It's more to do with the quality of teachers. I think that's the first and foremost thing, most important thing. A school is not about its infrastructure. It's not about, what's the area of its campus and how tall the buildings are. And I'm sure there are academic institutions of eminence which are single gender, whether that be Harrow or Eton or Doon closer home or La Martiniere in Calcutta. And the other way, great co-ed institutions as well. So I think it's more to do with the passion, the quality of teachers, the kind of dedication they put in. And I firmly believe they are the backbone of our entire education system. And of course, infrastructure and other facilities that goes without saying. So I guess these are more important than this topic. However, I really look forward to hear from other esteemed panelists as well. I think Burrit sir and ma'am made some very good points, and I look forward to hear from other panelists as well. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it is now time to introduce our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker is Mrs. Anupama Ramachandran. With over 2 decades of experience in teaching at various levels, ranging from kindergarten to senior secondary level, Mrs. Ramachandra believes that education must result in empowerment with responsibility. With postgraduate degrees both in English literature and education, she has always been a passionate teacher of English and an educational administrator who insists on total quality management. Her pursuit to inculcate appropriate language skills in her students encouraged her to become a University of Cambridge certified oral examiner for international English assessments. After receiving the rare honor of participating in the FCTE program through the Nehru Fulbright Awards, her perspective of mobilizing available resources and involving the community for better education changed drastically. Post the US assignment, she has been actively involving the school in outreach programs, thus bridging the gap between schools and communities. She has received the Chanakya Award 2019 for excellence in teaching of English from the Public Relations Council of India, the Karnataka Shikshana Ratna State Award, the Principal Par Excellence from IIHM, Stree Shakti Samman 2020 from IUEF, to name a few of her personal achievements. Teacher training, community engagement, and connecting classroom teaching to real-life challenges are her areas of interest. She is a certified resource person for teachers training programs conducted by the CBSE, the city coordinator for national competitive exams conducted by the National Testing Agency, and has been on review panels of subject-related publications. Having taught at various institutions across the country, she is currently the founder principal of Delhi Public School Electronic City, Bangalore. Ma'am, privileged to have you back with us. It was such a great presentation that you made last time. Over to you.
A very good evening to all present here, and thank you, Shubhayu, for that wonderful and warm introduction. It certainly feels great to be back again at Notebook. So being the fourth speaker on a panel discussion is not something very desirable for anyone, because whatever we have prepared ourselves to say is already been covered. Nevertheless, it also means that we have a lot of inputs to respond to and react to. So like the topic today, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to being coming in a little later on panel discussions. So I would like to quickly share my screen with all of you before I start my presentation. So Shubhayu, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, we can see it. You can move to the full screen if you want.
I'll do that. Okay, so starting off, there's a lot being said about what co-education means, and this is the definition you would come across when you do look up co-education, that it means that boys and girls go to the same institute to get educated. There's a lot of inputs on when co-education actually started, and Wikipedia says that it started as early as 1714 in the United Kingdom, and they also say that the oldest co-education day in boarding school started as early as 1818, and it still continues. That school is still around with around 1,250 pupils, but like they said before, not too many hostels, or what you call as dormitories, are there for both the boys and girls together. And the first co-educational college was founded in 1833 with about 44 students. So great educationists, scholars, philosophers have always felt that co-education is the healthy, balanced way of constituting any educational institution, for the obvious reasons mentioned by our earlier panelists. Now, the advantages and disadvantages of the co-ed system is something that I would not like to dwell upon. This is something that has been mentioned by WiseStep, and like it's already been mentioned before, but this is something that I personally believe too, that a co-educational setup develops mutual respect for the genders. And very, very important here that I would like to point out is that it helps overcome the fear of the opposite gender. Many a times we have noticed that either the girls or the boys who come from the single gender schools, when they have to function in an environment that has both the genders, they are slightly disadvantaged, because they have not had a kind of an exposure as to conduct themselves in the presence of the other gender. So this is, true to a large extent, which I've seen personally also, where many a times even little children have been told, I mean, we generally have this education on good touch and bad touch, and many a times we have seen that little children as young as kindergartners do not want to be touched by any male, no matter who they are, right? So this can continue if they are in a single gender school. And of course, it creates healthy competition, develops self-esteem, and encourages the survival in future, because as we all know, schools should be mini representations of the society itself. And in the future, everybody who goes out of schools and colleges are going to survive in a society that has both the genders. So this makes them or equips them with the skills for survival in future also, probably in their adult life or in their careers also. And it says character is enhanced, and there is no space for discrimination, and it promotes a controlled environment. And the disadvantages have already been mentioned again, that there are chances of distractions, unethical activities. Now, there is one point that I would like to make here, being the devil's advocate, that we cannot rule out the possibility of unethical activities in single gender schools also. So we cannot generalize and say that unethical activities happen only in schools where we promote or we have co-educational education. It can happen in single gender schools also. And I have a lot of examples to support this statement of mine. And the disadvantage mentioned here is, they say that there is more involvement in personal feelings, and unwanted arguments and issues can create an unhealthy environment. But like I said before, I personally feel that these arguments can build a lot of value to the topics being discussed. It's always good, like Mr. Ochin said, the male and the female perspectives are very, very different. And these perspectives can make the issue being debated upon a very healthy one. It may be filled with a little bit of friction, but then the end result is that there is a more comprehensive view about the entire topic. And of course, it says reduces the option for schools or colleges for the genders. If we go for more co-educational schools, this report says that we're going to have fewer schools for boys and girls. So having said that, I would like to go a step further, that what does co-educational school actually mean? Is it just that we have schools that admit boys and girls and then we have boys and girls in our classroom? Or should we go a step further and discuss on what it means in reality? According to me, I feel that co-educational schools should be educational institutions where, in addition to having the boys and girls together, we need to look into the fact that the education they receive is without any discrimination of any kind. Okay, so this is the first point that I would like for example, as teachers, we are all victims to what I'm saying right now. Suppose there is a heavy desk that has to be shifted from one place to another. We generally ask the boys to do it. Suppose we want a notice board to be decorated, we always would want the girls to do it because we feel they do a better job at that. So this kind of discrimination, which is very, very insignificant if you see, but it all starts from here. And of course, a learning environment must be common. We all know schools where we have girls and boys being admitted, but due to some guiding principles of that school, boys and girls are made to sit in separate classrooms. They have separate sections of the school, accessibility to separate parts of the school also. And very, very important is they have to learn and play together. How many of us are encouraging the girls and boys to play together, have a football match with boys and girls on the same team, not the boys pitted against the girls, but the boys and girls in the same team? Are we being conscious of promoting such practices? Very, very important. The next point is, are we including the girls and boys in discussions on common topics? Very recently, there was a discussion on menstrual hygiene, And I remember one of our staff members saying that probably we should just have the girls in a room because they would feel very, very uncomfortable if the boys were around. And I very, very strongly opposed this and said that it is very important to include the boys in such discussions too, because they already know about these things. It's just that you think they don't know. So it's always good for them to have information from the right source. Okay, so are they discussing common topics? And are they being given any preference because of their gender? So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves if we are part of co-educational schools. I personally feel that these questions have to be asked to each one of us, because it's not enough if we have schools where boys and girls are together, but we need to treat them equally. Now, all of us know the difference between equality and equity. Many times, like I told before, girls are there, but the boys are there. I'm not singling out the boys, because many times the boys are left out when we are thinking of giving preferences because of obvious reasons. Now, this is something that all of us have to be very conscious about, that as conscious as we are about making the girls comfortable, making the girls safe, we are equally responsible to take care of the boys in our schools. So it is not enough if you give equal opportunities to the boys and girls. We need to provide opportunities to both the genders depending on their requirement. That is very, very important, so that there is equity in the way both the genders receive education. Now, as far as equity is concerned, we all know that the girls are the ones who have to face the disadvantage in our country. And the ACER report of 2018 shows that there are still quite a few girls who are left behind. They are not able to attend school. And 13.5% of the girls between the age of 15 and 16 are also left out of school. Now, why am I bringing this up in a discussion where we are talking about co-education? I would like to point out the stereotypical mindset where we do not want to send girls to school. One of the reasons is because there is no school which admits only girls. So many girls are made to stay back. Of course, there are other reasons, because many schools do not have toilets for girls. There is no safety. They don't even have compound walls. But in addition to that, there are many girls who are not sent to school because they do not have access to an all-girls school. So this stereotypical behavior comes out of the fact that they want to establish same gender schools, and the disadvantage is mainly to the girls always. And what do we need to do to take care of this so that girls are encouraged to go to school? Like I told before, the stereotypical mindset has to be approached first. And the Maharashtra State Bureau of Textbooks Production and Curriculum, they have revised their textbooks for first and second grades to show men and women sharing household chores and to portray women as professionals rather than just housewives. So this is such a beautiful step that they have taken up. As school administrators, there are a lot of things that we can do to bring about this change so that more boys and girls go to school together and they receive the same treatment. Like for example, we all form groups in classrooms for discussions. During this time, are we conscious that we form heterogeneous groups where there is an equal representation of the boys and girls? Are we including them? Because it is so important to have the boys and girls on such discussions. Many a times we have noticed that in schools, we have, like, for example, let's say an investiture ceremony. We have the head boy, we have the head girl, we have the sports captain boys, we have the sports captain girls. In general, I mean, you can just do this out of curiosity also. If you notice, it's always the head boy who is introduced before the head girl. So in our school, very consciously from the first year, I have made it very clear to all our staff members that 1 year we introduce the head girl first, and the following year we introduce the head boy first. So it's not that we are just promoting or giving preference to the girls. Both of them are being treated with equal respect, and we are treating them the way they should be ideally. And why should we do it? Like Mr. Ochin said, girls, if they are there in the system, they not only add socially, they not only bring social value, but they also bring in economic value as per this slide. Now, what is the situation today? Why are we talking, this morning when I told my younger brother that I was going to be a part of a panel discussion on co-education, he said that, 50 years back, we all went to co-education schools. So what are you still discussing about co-education today in 2020? Well, this topic has been relevant in the past, relevant today, and is going to be relevant in the future, because in reality, the situation is like what is in the slide. Now, I was not able to pull out a slide with children, so I had to pull out a slide with adults. But ideally, in reality, this is the situation in schools also, where the boys have an advantage. And I am not talking only about the school that I represent, because ours is a school which caters to the needs of the higher middle class. So I am talking in general about the situation in India, where the boys have an advantage as against the girls in education, in careers, in jobs. The girls have to work doubly hard to be where the boys are. And what are we asking for? Are we asking for a lot? No, we are just asking that all of them, both the genders, should have equal opportunities. Unfortunately, we have to give the girls more opportunities because they are part of the disadvantaged group for a very, very long time. So just giving them equal opportunities may not bring them to this situation where they are at par with the boys in all respects. So for quite a few years, we need to give the girls more advantage, more opportunities, more quotas, so that they finally do come up to the level of the male gender. Now, we have to start with gender equity because it ultimately leads to gender equality. So we have to start small, and then we need to do a lot of persuading, and then we will finally reach where we have to. Now, I would like to quote a personal example of mine that one evening, we generally have stay back classes for all the children who are interested in games and sports. And I always stay till the last child has left school. So one of my senior girls came to my cabin and she said that, "Ma'am, I'm very upset today and I need to talk to you." And she said that she was upset with with our PT teacher, who told her that after the sports practice, she wanted the girls to change back into their track pants and then only board the bus. So the girls would change into shorts or something more comfortable to wear, to play. And then the PE teacher insisted that they had to change back to their track pant or school uniform and then only board the bus. Then when I asked her, "So why are you angry about it or upset about it?" She said, "Ma'am, why are the boys not being asked to change too? They are being allowed to go the way they are without changing back. Why is it that the girls have to go, and after playing our game, we are also tired? Why is it that we have to change back?" And then when I asked the teacher why she was doing this, she said that I'm actually a little worried about their safety, and that is the reason why I want to change them to change back into something which is more covering. So immediately I told her that if you have something in mind about safety, why isn't it there for the boys too? She said, "No, but it also protects them. It does not let them lose their body heat." I said that should be for the boys too. So the thought, it starts from there, right? Promoting co-educational schools starts from there, that we do not make the girls feel inferior to the boys because of any reason, we need to have open conversations with both the genders. And of course, I remember my son and my nephew, both of them did mechanical engineering. And they said that in their class, I think there were like one or two girls only in their class, because mechanical engineering was not for the girls because of the physical constraint is what was thought of. So we all know that there are certain professions that are meant for girls. There are certain professions which are meant for boys. That is what we tell them. Like 92% of the nurses are all women. Over 93% of all the teachers across the world are women, and we don't see too many women taking up so-called male-dominated jobs like the financial managers, budget analysts, higher-level medical positions, to name a few. Why is this happening? It is because somewhere we are not balancing the responsibilities of the male and female gender, and it starts in schools. All of you have already spoken about the advantages and disadvantages of having a single gender school and a co-educational school, but I would beg to differ, because I have studied in a co-educational educational institution throughout my educational journey, except for the 3 years that I did my graduation. Now, when I think back, what was different between the co-educational institution and the all girls college that I studied, I really cannot think of major differences that it made to my character or it added to what I already was. Of course, in the all girls college, we had a lot of fun. There was nobody to stop us from having the girl talk, and then, we could openly keep combing our hair and maybe apply a bit of lipstick or whatever. But otherwise, I really did not see any difference in the way I shaped as an individual. I really don't know, because I did not find data to pull up to see whether being in a girls' school does make a difference or being in an all-boys school makes a difference. But the panelists who spoke before me have enlightened me that educational achievement is higher in a single gender school. Now, my question is for, NEP also talks about how we should not focus only on curriculum or marks. Life is much beyond that, right? So as the slide says, John Dewey has already said that education is a social process. It is something that builds society, right? So education is growth. Education is not preparation for life, but education is life itself. So along these lines, even in the NEP 2020, there is a lot of stress on how we should not focus on only marks. There is much more to life than that. And I strongly believe that schools should be mini representations of the society. So no man or woman is going to live on an island, like Mr. Ochin said. Nobody is going to live on an island with just members of their gender. They have to live, they have to survive, they have to succeed in a society that is there with both the genders. So isn't it better that we inculcate these skills in children from a very young age? Isn't it necessary for us to equip them in how to handle the other gender also? There are distractions. They may not focus on academics, but isn't that a challenge to tell them that you need to prepare yourself with all these distractions? Because in the recently conducted 10th grade exam, a girl of our school, ours is a co-educational school, she topped the city. She stood second in the city of Bangalore. So if she was not distracted, I mean to say that whether you're in a girls' school or a boys' school, somebody who is focused will not be distracted. And as Harry Holkeri says, men and women have roles. Their roles are different, but their rights are equal. So what I meant to say was that we need to have representation of both the genders in a school, because that is the natural balanced way of educating children. So the question I would like to end my talk is that it doesn't matter whether we send our children to co-educational schools or single gender schools, but the more relevant critical questions that we as educators need to ask ourselves is, are we a co-educational school with regressive ways of conducting the curriculum, or are we a single gender school with progressive, balanced approach to functioning? The result will be the same in both these schools. So as parents, we should not be worried where we should send our school. We should have other parameters to take into consideration while we are admitting our children to schools. So with this statement of mine, I would like to end my talk. And I would like to thank Notebook for giving me an opportunity to express my opinion on this very critical and relevant topic. And I am looking forward to listen to another esteemed panelist this evening. Thank you all once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for that wonderful presentation and the very refreshing take on co-education, challenging not only the gender ratio in the classroom, but the gender ratio in the whole thought process, I guess. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for me to introduce our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker is Ms. Ruvena Sanyal. She is a counseling psychologist and the senior school counselor at La Martiniere for Boys, Kolkata. She is also a consultant for child and adolescent mental health issues. She conducts training programs and workshops for teachers, parents, and students, and has been associated with the leadership program for principals run by the Council for Indian School Certificate Examinations. Ma'am, privileged to have you with us again. Over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
A very good evening to all of you in the audience, and especially I think my heartfelt thanks to Notebook at the beginning for having me back to share my thoughts with you. As Ma'am Ramchandran said, if you are the fourth speaker after a number of eminent speakers, you definitely feel a little nervy. Well, I'm the fifth speaker, so you can imagine what is running through my mind right now, because I'm beginning to wonder what exactly am I to share. There's nothing left. However, having said that, I think Shubha, you put it into perspective for me by mentioning that I happen to be a psychologist at a single-sex school in Kolkata, which then reminded me that I could possibly share some of my experiences over the past few years, which might help to throw some light on this extremely interesting debate. My sincere apologies because Zoom has been acting up since the morning, and I have not been able to bring my presentation through my laptop to you. But I believe, I think one of you is standing by with the presentation. So if you would like to put it up on screen.
Yes, ma'am, it should be up
There
there.
isn't much, it just, yeah, it is. Thank you so much. And I hope I will remember to tell you to please just
Sure, ma'am.
shift from one slide to the other. Thank you very much for that assistance. So as I said, I was frantically trying to change my notes and trying to think where I could, bring in something that would contribute to the entire discussion that has happened so far. And I realized that maybe what I need to focus on is the ground reality, which I have been experiencing over the past almost 20 years now, because I've been associated with La Martiniere for the past 12 years. But before that, I've worked with a variety of schools, co-educational as well as single gender schools. And so what I bring to the table today would be not only anecdotal, but at the same time, if you think a little bit below the surface, it might just help to throw light on this extremely interesting ongoing debate, which is whether to co-educate or not to co-educate. What I want to highlight right at the very beginning is the word education. And whenever I attend seminars, workshops, speeches, debates, the one thing that every person brings up when they talk about education is the importance of holistic education. Education at every level which prepares you for life. Therefore, you're talking about physical, mental, emotional, social, moral development when you are looking at a holistic education. And that is where I would like to start. Because no education can be complete or whole if you are segregating or putting people in little pigeonholes and saying, you belong here and you belong here, right? And keeping that in mind, I would like to move on to the next slide, which would highlight from a psychologist's perspective the disadvantages of segregation or having single gender schools. As quite a few of the earlier panelists have mentioned in capital letters, distractions, yes, distractions, inappropriate behavior, relationship issues. So I'm going to address each one from my point of view. When you look at a co-educational setup, immediately you begin to think of all the negatives that could and possibly do happen. So I've had, little boys being brought into my chamber in a school saying, man, you need to counsel him because he does not know how to behave properly. And I'm like, but what has this little fellow done? He's hardly 6 or 7 or 8 years old. Well, ma'am, he was standing below the staircase, looking up while the girls were walking up and trying to peer under their skirts. And you will have another little fellow dragged into my room saying, you know what he was doing, hanging around outside the girls' washroom and trying to peer in and see what they're up to. Or another little girl who was brought in for counseling saying that, she was lifting up her skirt and exposing herself to the boys, and look how inappropriate this is. Now therein starts this entire debate. Okay, because at the age of 5 or 6 or 7, these children do not actually have any sexual motive or anything that could be termed as negative, unless of course we go into the darker debate of child sexual abuse and incest, which is also very relevant. But if we come back to, within quotes, normal behavior, then this is also very normal behavior because it is a normal curiosity. It does not have a sexual connotation. It is curiosity, it is a sense of exploration, it is a sense of adventure, it is a sense of, I want to know and I want you to show me because I want to know how are you and I different. So that is where we start in primary school. And then happily for all of us, by the time these children approach class 4, 5, 6, they go into a totally different mindset, which is, I hate boys or I hate girls and keep them far away from me. Okay. And that again brings in another very interesting aspect of growing up. The herd mentality is beginning to take root. These children are beginning to role model not on adults in their environment, but upon their peers. And therefore, they want to remain within their own little groups of all girl or all boy connotations. And it is here where parents and teachers begin to have extremely important roles to play. Because if you, as an educated, sensible adult, handle these problems in the right way, then obviously not only are you giving them the correct information, but you are also role modeling through your own behavior. You are role modeling what is acceptable and what is appropriate. And if that is the foundation based on which this child is beginning to learn gender identity and gender roles, then you don't have all that many problems as they continue to grow. Having said that, we now move into the teenage years. And this is where, as Mr. Barrett pointed out and all of the other panelists so beautifully highlighted, you have all of the actual problems setting in. You have relationship issues, you have a lot of discipline worries, the question of security begins to arise. And that is why a lot of parents and quite a few teachers also believe that it is so much safer to have girls in a separate girls' school and boys in a separate boys' school. But once again, coming back to what I just said about parents and teachers handling it in a sensible way, I think that same contribution can continue even into the teenage years. I have had innumerable number of young people coming and crying in my room, boys and girls, he said this, he did this. I've been so interested in him, and he's been my best friend. I've now discovered that in addition to him being my best friend, I now have soft feelings for him. But he's interested in my best friend, and therefore boo hoo hoo, and they're sobbing their hearts out. And I have had boys coming and telling me, man, I was preparing for this particular day. Day in question, 14th of February. I was preparing for this particular day for an entire year, and I bought this big chocolate, and I bought these roses, and I went and you know um, uh, with great courage, holding my courage in both my hands, I went and I faced her, and I told her that I liked her, and then she told me, she just looked at me, she laughed, and she said, "Shakal dekhi hai aine mein." And at that point in time, I'm dying to laugh, but I can see his heart breaking, because when he looked at himself in the mirror, he was seeing this sher, this babbar sher. And then when he went and approached her, he became a bhigi billi, and he had to run away from that situation, and the poor guy's ego is shattered. What are we talking about? We're talking about very real issues that young people face. And once again, if they have that anchor, if they have the knowledge that there is a parent or an elder sibling or even the school counselor or a teacher whom I can go and share with, they are opening up for you the doors of communication. And when you have this door of communication open between yourself and a young person, think of all the wonderful opportunities that you are being provided with to not only connect with them at different levels, but to give them the kind of information, the correct information that they require. Because please understand, these young people, especially today, they live in a virtual world, and their information comes to them from the internet. If you are in doubt, Google it, right? And that is where you have the dangers that lurk around the corner. And that is when you begin to think of distraction, inappropriate behavior, discipline issue, unhealthy environment, and all of the other negatives or disadvantages. But once again, I would like to underline that as sensible adults, and quite a few of us have also been there and done that. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? If you go back to the time when we were growing up, think about the reaction to a movie like Julie. Think about the Flower Children and the hippie culture, and the phenomenon of young girls running away with young boys. I know it happened in my school. It was an all girls school, and we suddenly one day came to school and got the information that one of our friends had been asked to leave school. That was because she had had the temerity to run away with her boyfriend, and therefore the entire thing that surrounded that one particular incident. Nowadays young people have so much more freedom, they have so much more opportunity. But my point is, if we are there to handhold them through the difficult phase that they are going through, especially during adolescence, then there is nothing to worry about, because we are there to provide them with friendship, and we are there telling them that you go ahead, make the right choices, and if you're ever in doubt, I'm here for you. And I think from that perspective, we can safely move. Please change the slide from the disadvantages into the discussion on advantages, because that is where our actual debate ends. The advantages are innumerable. And why not? As I said right at the beginning, you cannot compartmentalize if you want to have a holistic education. And look at all the wonderful things that develop by just having boys and girls in the same classroom. And I will not go into each and every one of them because they've already been addressed by all of the earlier panelists. But if you look at the screen, you can just run your eye down this entire list, and you realize that at every level, you are doing so much for these young minds. You start with encouraging cooperation. You start with encouraging healthy communication. From there, you move into the arena of understanding each other's personality, understanding each other's likes and dislikes. There was this wonderful book written, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which highlighted the differences between the sexes, but at the very same time, there was a subtle underlining of every level at which the twain meet. And yes, we all know that wonderful, beautiful sentence that says, women hold up half the sky. So if that is true, then we need to now start letting these subliminal messages go across to our young people so that they begin to overcome the fear of the opposite gender. They begin to healthily compete with each other. And from competition, they move into participation and cooperation. This not only develops their self-esteem, but builds their self-confidence and contributes to an enhancement of their character. And when we have that happening in our classrooms, believe me, there is no space. What we are then doing is promoting at the very beginning at every level, physical, mental, emotional, social, and moral. And that is when we are actually achieving our target of a holistic educational environment. So moving on, from my perspective, to what I thought would be relevant to today's discussion. Okay, moving from the disadvantages into the advantages, and now moving on to the next slide, please, wherein I would like to focus on how can we actually implement this. Ma'am Ramchandran mentioned this in a little way, and I would like to build on that. The first question that I have when we're talking about implementation of equal rights and equal opportunities in the classroom, the first question is whether to segregate or not. Let's be honest, we live in a country that still continues to be strongly patriarchal. And we are also divided, not only along the lines of male and female, but we've got caste, class, and religious considerations to also play their role, right? So we do need to wonder as to what is the extent to which we should segregate, as you can see in the picture, especially when we go into the semi-urban and rural areas. We would need to consider whether it would make sense to have boys and girls sitting on the same bench. It may not always be acceptable. But having said that, we're living in an age of social distancing. But having said that, we're not only looking at the issue of physically being present in the class or physically sitting on the same bench as a girl or a boy. Let's look at the actual implementation of co-education in the classroom. To go slightly off track and share with you an experience that I had in my all-girls school. There, we were in class 9 and we had the concise biology book, and we had this wonderful biology teacher, may her soul rest in peace, wonderful biology teacher who was so brilliant when it came to teaching everything to do with biology, except that one chapter where she said, you know, girls, you will not get questions from this chapter, so let's just skip it. But that is my point. That is exactly my point. That is where we actually start. We start with a genderized, or rather a genderless curriculum. Okay, Ma'am Ramchandran mentioned in one of her slides that you had the Maharashtra board, which has changed the way in which the subjects are being addressed or the chapters are being written. I think, if I'm not wrong, I also have read about books that were in some of the schools, being used in some of the schools in Bangalore and Chennai, where you are not only having a man shown in the kitchen and a woman being shown sitting in front of a computer screen, but you are also having pictures of two men with a little child or two women and a little child. So we're taking it further. We're going beyond just talking about male-female equality. We're talking about human rights. We're talking about the equality of all human beings, where we are also addressing the issues of transgender. And this is when we are talking about a genderless curriculum, where the subject, where the chapters, the illustrations, and even the classroom teaching does not underline the stereotypes or the misconceptions and the biases, the sexist biases and the discriminations that have been handed down over donkey's years now. Because let's think about it. When you have a school play, you do have boys and girls playing roles on the stage, right? But if you go backstage, do you have many girls dragging the props and the furniture, or do you have a large number of boys doing that? Why do you have that? In a school like La Martiniere for boys, when you have a play like Macbeth, which is what We've done Macbeth, we've done Mamma Mia, we've done so many plays, and we've had the boys playing the role of the girls. And it is a huge step forward when you have a boy wearing a wig and a dress and painting lipstick onto his lips. No, we are not encouraging transgender. We are talking about equality, right? And that is when you are bringing a proper sense of equal rights and equal opportunities so beautifully enshrined in our, you're taking it out of mere concepts and discussions, and you're bringing it into the classroom, and that is where you achieve what you've actually set out to achieve as an educator. Moving from regular classroom teaching into academic, where, as the earlier panelists have also highlighted, and so do I, academic is a huge area where you can actually motivate boys and girls. You want to attract someone's attention, so go get more marks. No. You can actually talk to them and motivate them from this point of view. And this is what I often tell young people. You want the attention of that particular girl? Do you know what you need to do? You need to get out there onto the sports field. You need to get into your books. You need to get yourself involved in activities. Make yourself so good that you begin to shine like a star. And when you do, you become popular. You have other girls being interested in you. You have a lot of friends, and somewhere in that entire process of you developing into whom you have so much potential to be, you might just attract the attention of the person that you want to also. And isn't that a wonderful thing to happen? Right? And therefore, academics, extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities provide you with so many opportunities to encourage young people to by side. And this is when you also begin to talk about parameters, boundaries, and appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And where would you do that? You could do it separately in quality circle time classes, in value education classes, in life skills classes, and yes, the big no word, the sex education classes, right? This is something that I've always told educators, principals, teachers, and students. You know, in a sex education class, believe me, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't have to teach your children. I don't teach your children how to have sex. They already know. As I said, fortunately or unfortunately, they already know. Therefore, my role as a sex educator would be to teach them boundaries, teach them acceptable, unacceptable, teach them appropriate, inappropriate, and then provide them with the opportunity for making the right decisions. And isn't that what maturity and growing up is all about? And you don't need to do this in dedicated sex education class, your English literature class, where you are teaching Romeo and Juliet, for example, right? That would be an appropriate class for sex education. And yes, mental health as well. We don't want people committing suicide. Moving on from there, how do you use your life education or value education classes? One way is to definitely invest in quality circle time. I'm sure most of us have heard of this delightful lady by the name of Jenny Mosley. I've met her personally, I've been trained by her. And you have her counterpart in India, in Bangalore, Mala Menon, and they are wonderful when it comes to training teachers in the use of quality circle time. So what is quality circle time? You sit around in a circle and you communicate. You communicate, you speak, you listen, you share, you emote. And isn't that also so valuable when you want to teach young people how to behave? And you don't need to have dedicated value education teachers or life skill trainers coming into your school to do this. Every teacher, and for that matter, every parent, can be a good value educator, provided you have the right information. And if you don't, well, take a leaf out of our young people's books. Google it. Get yourself prepared. Get yourself armed with the right weaponry, and then no, don't go into battle. Sit down with our young people. Talk to them. Talk to them as a friend would, because that is what works. And this is coming to you from someone who's been in this field for more than 20 years now. Talk to them as a friend. Because if you come down heavily on them as a parent or as somebody who's delivering a lecture, believe me, you're going to see the shutter coming down and they're not listening to you anymore. But if you come across as a friend, if you come across as an adult who's willing to listen, who's willing to share, who's willing to give the right information without being shy, without being embarrassed, you've not only made a friend for life, but you've kept open that door of communication for life, because believe me, they will keep coming back to you. Whenever they're in trouble, whenever they have a question, whenever they have a doubt, they will come to you. And that is the ideal which you want to achieve. And what have you achieved by all of these things? Well, the common thread that stitches all of these things together is gender equality and a reduction in gender discrimination, right? So moving on to the next slide, and this, I promise you, it's been quite a long session and I wouldn't like to keep you much longer. Let's practice what we preach. So once again, just going a little off track, let's look at what I have right at the top of my screen, changing mindset. Years ago, and maybe even until recently, dyslexia and dysgraphia was a huge problem, predominantly because it was not identified. So you had this large number of children sitting in the classroom, even at the pre-primary level, using their left hand to write. And you have the not so good teachers who would maybe tie their hand behind the back or make them sit on their left hand and force them to use their right hand. But over a period of time, you also had this burgeoning or mushrooming group of excellent teachers who would sit the child down and say, Suno bachche, I don't care whether you're writing with your right hand, right foot, left foot. I don't care whether you're using a pencil, a pen, a paintbrush, or a crayon. I am interested in what you are writing, and I'm interested in how much you have learned in my classroom. And that is when things began to change, right? And that is the power of being a good educator. Changing mindsets is the point at which we all start. Which brings me to the set of people whom I actually want to address today. I know the audience probably has a large number of parents and an even larger number of educators, and it is to the educators I speak. The parents, yes, definitely, but it is to the teachers whom I speak. And I know if looks could kill, there are times when I would actually be 12 feet underground, because teachers tell me, you know what, we're juggling so much, how much more are you going to dump on us? But let's be fair and honest, teachers. You're in this profession because you know the impact that you have. We just celebrated Teachers' Day, right? And I got a beautiful text from one of my students, just a two-liner that said, "Ma'am, thank you very much, ma'am. सिर्फ पढ़ाने के लिए नहीं, but अच्छे इंसान बनाने के लिए." And that to me was the best gift that I could have received on Teachers' Day. And that, teachers, is what I bring to you. You don't only teach, you make अच्छे इंसान, you make अच्छे ladies and gents, right? And so that is where your role becomes even more important. So for changing mindsets, once again, I look to you, the educators of the current generation. And I propose to the schools that if you already have, you know, a team of counselors and special educators, psychologists, doctors, whatever you may have on your panel or in your school system, please involve your teachers as well. Create a small core group of teachers who could be trained by your in-house psychologists, or bring in the experts. Have trainings for your teachers in value education, in life skills and quality circle time, and in sex education. And it is this group of teachers, aided by the psychologists or counselors in your school, who would then take the process forward at two levels. Three levels. Number one, in the classrooms, definitely. Number two, with the parents, because you can now look at having regular interaction sessions with your parents, orientation programs, awareness programs, where you can talk to parents, because the parents also need to understand that it is they who are propagating these old archaic patriarchal systems. Girls will cry, boys don't cry. Dolls for girls, guns for guys. Boys not in the kitchen. I actually had a very interesting experience a couple of years ago, where I was encouraging this mum who had a very hyperactive child. I was encouraging her to involve him in household activities, so that, you know, we could have him kind of wear out some of that excessive energy that he had. So I told her, you know, get your son involved in jharu pocha. What's the problem? And she came back to me a week later saying, ma'am, do you know what happened? My mother-in-law came and told me, Larki bana rahi ho kya? That's the point. Charity begins at home, changing of mindsets begins at home as well. And you, dear teachers, can actually help with the change of that mindset when you talk to parents, because you're a parent yourself. So you will be coming across not only as a guru, because in India, thankfully, we still respect our teachers. So yes, over a period of time, we've seen a waning of that as well. But keeping that aside, that's a different debate altogether. Coming back to this issue that we're talking about, co-education, genderization, equal rights and equal opportunities, we also need to address the parents. And it is you, because you still are in that position of guru, right? So when you speak to parents in an orientation program and talk to them about the necessity of having an equalistic approach towards boys and girls at home, then your job is half done. And yes, another very interesting thing that is happening here in Kolkata, and I'm sure it's happening in other schools as well. We have monitors, captains, vice captains, Madam Chandra mentioned, and I'm sure every school does have that. Why don't we also look at psychologists and teachers taking a back seat, and let's create a group of peer educators and peer moderators. So it would be up to the teachers and the psychologists and the counselors in school to actually have these little groups of students. We pick out these students, the ones who can be role models for the others. And we train them and we allow them to speak to the youngsters. It works brilliantly because the younger ones definitely look up to the bhaiyas and the didis in senior school. They would definitely one day want to be up there holding the school flag, wearing a badge. And therefore, if it is an elder student who's talking at an assembly, who comes into your class and maybe conducts a value education class, and if you have assemblies where you have young people speaking to each other, if you have fests where you have young people bringing up these ideas and topics and discussions, then believe me, you've gone a long way in not only co-educating, but actually achieving what we've always wanted to achieve, bringing equal rights and equal opportunities into the classroom and having a holistic educational environment. I would like to once again put on record my thanks to Mr. Bhattacharya, Shubhayu, Abhishek, and the entire Notebook team for having me here again to share my thoughts with you. I hope I have been able to give you something to think about, and not only something to think about, but something to act upon as well. Thank you so much. Good day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We know that you had a fairly busy schedule, but thank you so much for taking out time because you
Most
have been an
welcome.
immense value add to this discussion. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we go into the vote of thanks, Shivani ma'am, I see that you had marked one question uh, that you would be answering live. Would you like to take that question now?
That question has already been answered by Philip sir,
Got it,
so
sir.
that's
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Ruvena ma'am, there's one question directly at you that asks, how should we handle the peer bullying in co-ed schools, especially a boy bullying or teasing a girl?
Well, once again, we don't differentiate at all. I'm sure if we have in-house policies or disciplinary measures, I'm sure every school does. And if you don't, it is high time that you do. There have to be extremely strict rules that need to be put in place for bullying, be it a boy or a girl. And if you have those measures in place, the first thing that needs to be done is a thorough inquiry into the situation. You do need to have a teacher, definitely the school counselor, and maybe even someone from the school board. This is, I'm just speaking randomly based on what we do at our school. And we do have a thorough inquiry into the incident to make sure that there are no false allegations on either part. And once we ascertain the facts of the matter and we are sure that it is a case of bullying, then the school has a very strong anti-bullying policy. We've actually written out an entire set of we have categories, and we've got category 1, category 2, category 3 offenses and misdemeanors, and we definitely would then quote that in a letter to the parent, because that's the next step. We call the parent in, we inform the parent of what the student has done, and if it is a first time offense, definitely there is a milder let's say, consequence to be borne. But if it is a second or a third time offense, then definitely the child is looking at a suspension. If not for a month, then definitely 2 to 3 weeks. And this is all of this is part of our school disciplinary procedure. So my first reaction to this question is clamp down on it and do not allow it to happen. Secondly, if it is happening in school, then we need to question ourselves as to why. Why are the boys getting an opportunity to do so? How are they getting an opportunity to do so? Is there any area where our vigilance is a little lax, or our awareness is a little lax? Thirdly, keeping in mind that we do have surveillance cameras and we do have disciplinary measures in place, bullying is a part of, I'm sorry to say this, it is a part of growing up as well. You are either a bully or a victim or a bystander. And it is very much a responsibility of the school and the teachers to not only send out strong messages against bullying, but to also do the positive part of it, which is talking about bullying in the classroom from the perspective of the victim and also from the perspective of the bully. Because if you send a strong message out to the bully saying you are a bully because you are a coward, you are a bully because you are insecure, you are a bully because you have issues of your own, and bache, let's sit and let's talk and let's work your issues out, then I'm sure you are addressing the problem in a holistic manner. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure that answer has been well received. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we will now come to the close of our session. Let me invite Achin back for the vote of thanks. Achin, over to you.
So I think very interesting session we had with some very logical, balanced and fair arguments on both sides. Really insightful. Bharat sir, thank you so much for your balanced views. I think great start and very well presented. Ms. Shivani Gupta, great to hear from you. And truly an expert's view, the way you deliberated on the whole thing. And especially the advantages of co-ed schooling system. I think wonderfully put forward by you. Ms. Anupama Ramchandran, I think one very interesting thing you highlighted, ma'am, equality versus equity. Very interesting concept and really like it. Also the results of ASER survey 2018, really a case in point. Time for us to put on our thinking caps and really work towards building a more inclusive education system. So I think very nice facts you brought forward. Also great to know the changes done by Maharashtra State Bureau of Textbook Production. I think change in the right direction, no denying the fact. Also, coming to the relevance of this topic, I think very well said. We are fortunate to be among the more privileged section of our country's population. But looking at B towns, C towns and villages, there are challenges that we realistically live with. Thus the importance and relevance of this topic is still very much on, and it will be relevant in times to come. So I think, and also I really like John Deere's quote, very well said. Ms. Ruvena Sanyal, I think, thank you for highlighting the concept of holistic education and also for giving us some sharing some very interesting incidents from your 2 decades long career. Really helps, real life incidents really helps the entire audience to understand things much better from a practical perspective. And I'll say very interesting and very relevant. So I think we really had a great session, and I also thank the audience for their time. I'm sure there's been some very important insights that our esteemed panelists have brought forward on this topic, which I'm sure will help all of us. With this, I thank all of you again and look forward to see you all in our next webinar. Thank you, take care and goodbye.